We approach what might be the final hours of this unipolar world. It's quite befitting that I'm doing these videos later and later into the wee hours of the morning. It is currently Sunday at midnight. Got to open up shop in 8 hours, so we got to make this quick. If you think that the largest amassing of warships and naval power in and around the Mediterranean, the Red Sea, and the Persian Gulf is an accident, or is just for the purpose of the Gaza Strip, or the West Bank, or even the broader Israel as a whole, or even Lebanon, then I think that you are naively optimistic about this current situation. We are seeing the largest amassing of naval power since World War II. Okay, think of all of the wars that have happened since World War II. This is the largest amassing of force. Ask yourself, why might that be the case? This is almost more firepower than you would even need if you were about to go to war directly with Iran. If you were explicitly stating that that was your objective, this would almost seem a little excessive. So something very big is going on right now. We are seeing high-level talks across the map. Hamas leaders, Iranian foreign minister recently in Moscow. Today, Sergei Shoigu met with his counterpart in China. Something big is absolutely about to happen. And I seriously don't know how much time we have left. According to the leader of Hezbollah, there's going to be an announcement on Friday. There's some ominous, cryptic videos floating around that might suggest that this is when they're going to effectively declare war. Now, we're living in an age where it's almost counterproductive to declare war. You want to retain the element of surprise. So what exactly is going to happen on Friday? Well, what we do know is that currently around the world, people have completely lost it. The intransigence when it comes to religious matters, and whether you're Jewish or Muslim or Christian, the inability to redress the grievances of the other side is on a whole other level that perhaps could have been mediated if this were a simple war over material and resources. This is a religious war now, and that means that it's a powder keg. It is highly unpredictable. We are seeing a new pogrom apparently take place. If you don't know what that is, I really honestly didn't even know that it had its own terminology until today. A pogrom is basically staging attacks on people of the Jewish faith or Jewish ethnicity, something obviously that was quite common throughout World War II. Now, why is this happening? Of course, this is in response to the Israeli government's mishandling of the response to the Hamas attacks, okay? I've been very critical of their response. I think they could have done it in a way which was far more measured, which would have retained what at one point was the majority support of the world, and it didn't have to quickly descend into violence. We are seeing street battles emerge. I can't even show you the videos. I mean, if you're up on this stuff, you know what's going on. But in Dagestan today, they literally stormed an airport, and I don't know who or what. This is in Rome today, the Colosseum of all places. I don't know who and what is orchestrating a lot of these things. You got to understand there is still going to be the element of intelligence services, be it the CIA or the Mossad, who are trying to undermine various governments around the world. And they will inject themselves into online forums, and they will actually start protests. They will do things to destabilize other countries. Now, authoritarian countries like Iran, China, and Russia are fairly good at stamping those problems out immediately. The Dagestan issue was interesting, to say the least. That this was so well coordinated and aggressive, of course, is very concerning for Jewish people abroad. And what this ultimately is going to amount to is the government cracking down more and more. So I quite frankly don't know how much time we have left to try to be the voice of reason here. I try to pride myself on being objective and empirical, because in some people's blind allegiance to one side or the other, there is a certain intransigence there that people simply cannot hear the other point of view of the other. And we get ourselves into this situation where it's just an untenable state of affairs, where neither side is willing to truly understand the grievance of the other side. And that is a very, very dangerous place to be. And now we have more stuff flaring up in the West Bank along with the Gaza Strip. My friends, this situation is going to get bad. It's going to get very, very bad. I do believe that this war that is bipartisan, apparently in nature, the House Speaker was, fully 110% committed now to sending $14 billion in aid to Israel. And it should be noted that around this stage in the war, Kim Iverson pointed this out today, that around this stage in the war, I can't show you this video, this is a street battle happening in Chicago between the Black Israelites and the Palestinians or something like that. But what was I saying about, so at this stage in the war, this is Turkish warships, another 100 Turkish warships celebrating a 100th anniversary. Okay, sure. Anyways, at this stage in the war, in the Ukraine-Russia war, about this far in, 3 weeks in, the United States had given $2 billion. We're already talking about $14 billion for a country that has nuclear weapons, okay, that has one of the most lauded militaries in the world, according to them, although a lot of people are very, very, they're not as convinced as they were at one point, let's put it that way. And apparently it's not going so well, but you wouldn't be able to truly know what's going on at the front line because, again, there's the fog of war. Both sides are downplaying their losses and upplaying their victories. But you have $14 billion going to a country with nuclear weapons, all the military equipment they need, hundreds of Merkava tanks, which I know in the grand scheme is not a lot if they're really going up against the entirety of the Middle East. But they got Egypt there, who supposedly is an ally, okay, and who has a lot of military firepower, who is really positioned and poised to enter the conflict if necessary on the side of the Israelis. But that could go either way also. You have this largest amassing of naval power in support of it. All of this within 3 weeks. 3 weeks. How long did those people in Hurricane Katrina hang out until they were bussed out with buses? Okay, think about that. Think about and there's so many people who are just, they're just like starry-eyed and completely hypnotized by all of this, and they're just cheering it on while their cities rot and addiction is through the roof and you can't afford to pay your bills and get by, and the price of food keeps going up and up and up, and now oil is going to spike and the whole system is going to crash. But people are still, send us to war. And it's unbelievable. I know not everybody is like that. I know some people think that there's some destiny or some biblical prophecy that is supposed to be fulfilled. Man, I just can't mess with that right now, to be brutally honest. I totally respect. I was raised in a Catholic faith. I'm an agnostic person by choice, but I just cannot get behind this idea that we need to prioritize war at this point in time with everything else that is going on. But hey, you do you and I'll do me, okay? What we have here behind me is the largest amassing of Turkish warships, I think, in some time. This is 100 Turkish warships at the same time that you have around 71 warships, both NATO and the U.S., and that's not including the submarines that we're quite certain are floating all around there. That's not including Israel's submarines, okay? And right in the Eastern Mediterranean, there is all kinds of air traffic from every possible country you can imagine. If you wanted World War III to start, you could not pick a better place. It's only a matter of time before Russia gives Syria the green light to start shooting down Israeli and American planes. Syria has S-300 systems, and they could easily shoot down Israeli fighter jets if they wanted to. And boy, you can bet that if pushed just a little bit more, Vladimir Putin may be compelled to give the green light to that very thing if their interests begin to get compromised. Now, on Friday, Hezbollah, who of course is going to be heavily supplementally funded by the Iranians, is going to be making an announcement. They sent out this ominous message today. Everybody's interpreting it in a different way. This is all it was, okay? It was just the guy walking by, the leader of Hezbollah, walking by their logo, which is, some people say looks a lot like the "Don't Tread on Me" thing, at least the colors and the general idea. Anyways, okay? So I haven't ever given any time to trying to interpret what this symbol means, but this is all the message they gave, and they said they're going to be, giving an announcement on Friday, so I guess we'll have to wait and see. Again, I don't think we're living in an era where a formal declaration of war is expected or in any way strategic, so I guess we'll just have to see. The question is, why would Hezbollah want to enter a conflict? I do not believe that the Iranians or the Qataris, if that's how you say that, Qataris, Qatarians, I don't know, I'm certain it's probably Qataris, Iraqis, the Saudis, or any major player in the region actually cares about the plight of the Gazans. It is unfortunate, but eventually there's going to be so much social pressure and they're going to leverage it politically. Right now you have Erdogan, whose country is in ruins. They're struggling with hyperinflation. He came out and said, and we got a lot of stuff to talk about. I'm not going to be able to do this video quickly because apparently Ukraine was targeting a nuclear repository in Russia, and that's a big deal. Now, according to the Turkish leader, he basically said that our military can come at night and unexpectedly, Turkey threatens war on Israel. The Turkish President Recep Erdogan has threatened war against Israel and will send his army to protect Gaza Palestinians. Well, he's not going to do that for the reason that they care. Turkey is a massive powerhouse of a country with a large military contingent and a huge arsenal of NATO weapons as well, which of course I'm sure are under the control of the Americans' nuclear weapons, and this is where the problem is going to be. Because ultimately, if we see those American nuclear weapons get withdrawn, or if it's even made public at all, perhaps they're not even there anymore for all we know, then you know that the writing is on the wall and Turkey is likely about to go to war with Israel. Now, Russia doesn't particularly want to go to war with Israel, but because there is some loose diplomatic ties there, but because Israel is essentially beholden to the West, and Russia is essentially at war with NATO, okay? So ultimately, it doesn't matter if Russia doesn't want to go to war with Israel or not. It doesn't matter if him and Netanyahu were best buddies back in the day. They will ultimately be on opposing sides. And if the Iranian interests in Syria are being targeted by Israel and the United States, eventually pressure will be put on Assad and Russia to counterattack. And when that happens, of course, that's when the sparks can possibly fly. Now, right now in Russia, attention is starting to slowly turn back. The Ukrainians have apparently gained a foothold on the left bank of the Dnieper River in the Kherson region. There is also apparently a nuclear plant incident. Now, this one is significant. We've heard often about drones that have targeted near or around nuclear power plants, but really never posed much of a threat by virtue of the fact that most of these power plants are fortified. However, this one targeted a nuclear repository, which is a nuclear waste. So when you have the spent fuel rods, that if you were to target that with a bomb, that would be a dirty bomb. Okay, it would be a radiological event. It would be a nuclear event, and it would give Russia a potential license then to retaliate with nuclear weapons, should they feel the need. Now, if they are continuing to utilize NATO reconnaissance, NATO intelligence in order to direct these drones into Russian territory, this didn't happen on Ukraine territory that's been annexed. This happened inside Russia. Okay? And it didn't even really make the news because everybody's focus, it happened on the exact same day as the big push into Gaza started. Now, according to the Ukrainians, they believe that this was a false flag and that was this for the sole purpose of getting more people mobilized, to getting the Russians, that this was more for a Russian audience. But I will say that, you know, Ukraine has been doing things like this throughout the conflict. But again, it's, you know, whoever's word you want to believe at this point in time. But it would seem as though it would be something, it wouldn't really be in the interests of Ukraine to do this. I mean, it wouldn't be, you know, it wouldn't be viewed well on the global stage. The United States, they don't want that kind of publicity. They would probably rein the Ukrainians in if they were to do something like this. The Ukrainian SBU spokesperson or former spokesperson or whatever she is, they were basically coming out and saying, see, we told you so, that they were going to do this. Now, was that just telegraphing because they wanted to, you know, kind of put that, implant that idea in people's heads that Russia was going to do this? It's hard to say. Regardless, a drone targeted a nuclear repository. Apparently, there wasn't enough damage that it was an actual radiological event, but it's a sign that this situation could potentially escalate on Russian soil once again. There's a lot of stuff happening in the Black Sea right now as well, okay? So there's just so many different ways that this conflict could potentially flare up. There's U.S. Marines apparently en route to the Eastern Mediterranean. A rapid response force is moving towards the Eastern Mediterranean Sea. And it appears as though what the Israelis are doing is they're making an incursion into the Gaza Strip along the direction of the actual, I don't have it on the map here, but they've started along the ocean, which kind of makes sense because they have cover from the warships on this side, whereas if they were to start here, then, you know, if these tunnels, wherever they might be, they would have just more, you know, they would have to cover more of their six, I suppose, because if they were to come in here, and I'm just trying to analyze this from the perspective of what's the easiest, safest way that we can go in where we control everything. Well, it would be along the edge of the ocean and then kind of work your way back this way, especially if you had a lot of support out here. Apparently, they were ambushed numerous times with the tunnels. They had rolled on through, and Hamas came up behind them, took out a few armored carrier vehicles. The Israelis are saying, well, we lost a couple guys because we flipped a tank, or, you know, they're really trying to downplay the capabilities of Hamas and make them look like buffoons. But apparently that's not what is happening at this point in time. Hezbollah also shot down an Israeli drone today. So they're starting to get serious. They're starting to pull out the big guns. Now, on a more serious note, I never even knew about this until later in the day, but apparently Al-Qassam brigades bombarded the area of the Dimona nuclear reactor in southern Israel with a missile barrage today. Not that you could really do a whole lot to a nuclear reactor, especially with the rockets that Hamas uses, but this is something worth noting because, again, there's been some very cryptic messages and pictures posted online of obvious sleeper cells who are currently in Israel right now, showing pictures of Suleimani aside a sign that says Dimona nuclear power plant and this and that, showing that they do have elements inside Israel that they are potentially going to activate. Now, of course, this is why Netanyahu is currently, as we reported yesterday, chilling in a bunker, and that story is also being published in the Telegraph as well. So this is not everything I talk about on here. You can go and fact check it. 95% of the time we are correct. There's that 5% when we are, you know, doing this stuff on the fly, and all kinds of information is even being quoted by the mainstream media, and it turns out to be not true. But 95% of it, I try to go to great lengths to ensure it's credible information. Sirens sounded in areas surrounding Gaza and Dimona, where the main Israeli nuclear reactor is located, in addition to the Negev in southern Israel. The Al-Qassam brigades, the military arm of the Islamic resistance movement, Hamas announced the bombing of Dimona with a missile salvo. This is where they produce plutonium that is used in nuclear bombs. So this is Israel's primary nuclear facility. Okay, so There are numerous nuclear-related facilities across Israel. I was one of the first people to make a point of mentioning how this could potentially be a problem there. And it's just something that people need to watch out for, because it is a potential dirty bomb scenario on the Israeli landmass. Now we have the situation in Gaza, where the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, in Gaza has said that thousands of Palestinians have broken into several warehouses in the Strip, raiding wheat, flour, and hygiene stores, among other basic necessities stored there. Now, a lot of other people are criticizing Gazans for this, okay? It's not like they're stealing Nike shoes. They're not stealing television sets. These people are stealing food. And understand the logistical predicament that the UNWRA finds themselves in at this point in time. When this happened, there was no communication. Power is intermittent. Their hospital system is completely overwhelmed. Dead bodies stacked up outside, okay? You have a lack of food, a lack of clean water, constant bombardment, clogged roadways because every other street is bombed out. So if there ever was a situation where you would expect some level of looting, this is where you would find it. The fact that the place hasn't descended into complete anarchy and chaos, I think, is a testament to the solidarity of Palestinians as a whole. And because any other society, I mean, if something like, imagine something like this were to happen in, like, just theoretically, happen in like Chicago or something like that. I mean, we are so divided as a nation that if anything, a much more low-intensity conflict ensued than this, aside being an open-air prison and constantly bombed into the Stone Age. We would crack long before the Palestinians and the Gazans did. So this is going to be a case study for years to come. The Gaza saga is going to be studied by historians, because never has there really been a situation like this when you think about it. You have a situation where people cannot leave an area. They're wholly dependent on outside aid. It's basically a shooting range, shooting ducks in a barrel. And it's testing the limits of their infrastructure. It's testing the limits of their social cohesion. It's a social psychological study. It's a variety of different studies to just see. And it's sad to say that, you know, people have to suffer in real life in order for us to understand how these things are going to play out. But this is something people absolutely need to bear in mind, that the situation you are seeing in Gaza is not going to be how it is here, where we have a much different culture, a much different relationship with our extended families and our communities. It would be total chaos here if anything remotely close to what is happening there happened here, which is why I encourage people this week, because we don't know, the markets are still acting strange with oil. Oil is still down, which is weird, and I'll talk about that in a second, but I would encourage people to just get the tanks topped off, top off the gasoline this week. It's not that we're going to run out of gas next week or something like that, but the price could skyrocket if you're trying to save a few bucks, which right now is very important for a lot of people. Get the gasoline now, get the food now, get the groceries, because we easily could see rapid price hikes in groceries, food, you know, just wholesale foods. Ammunition is another thing. Medication is another thing. We've done videos on that recently. And this might be the last week before things just really descend into total chaos. They're not just sending all those warships there for show. They're going to be used for some reason. Now, with respect to the price of oil, why is the price of oil not responding to all this? Why isn't the price of oil already $120, considering you're having so many warships descending upon this region right now? Well, I think part of the reason for it is that many of the bigwigs are probably interpreting that this show of force, because I think they're thinking that maybe the Iranian militias are really going to go the distance this time, and I think that might have been the concern. And they didn't know if the United States had the resolve to completely commit to making sure that Iran was not able to destabilize the region, because the only one who really stands to benefit from a destabilization of this region would be Iran and Russia. Saudis are enjoying having a monopoly on the oil trade, and all of their surrounding countries who have oil as well, they're enjoying being the ones who get to supply the world with oil. The Iranians, unfortunately, being heavily sanctioned, they don't enjoy this. So their only real incentive then in life is to try to complicate the system as it is, to potentially increase the price of oil so high that even they stand to benefit, even though some of their allies like China won't particularly like that too much. China doesn't want to see instability, but they probably have some sort of relationship with the Iranians that says, you know what, even if the price of oil goes up to $200 a barrel for the rest of the global market, so long as you have our back, we'll ensure that we'll give you, you know, as much oil as you want for no more than $80 a barrel or something like that. Because why not, right? Because we're sanctioned by everybody else anyways. We got the second largest or third largest or whatever it is, fourth largest, I don't know, supply of the stuff, and the good stuff, the stuff that the world wants. Then why wouldn't we do something like that? But I think the reason why oil is down is because the United States is moving all this military equipment there, and I think people are thinking that this is going to actually stabilize the situation. But what they don't probably know is that there is a high possibility, because they're not just sending all this stuff there to just stabilize the situation. I don't think so. I think that this is going to be provocative. I think they're intentionally trying to be provocative. One of these ships is going to get clipped. The more ships you have around, and you know, we recently had that issue of the Iranians commandeering American vessels, the Americans commandeering Iranian vessels. We have that tit-for-tat exchange, so now they got to police the waterways once again. We're eventually going to see one of these ships get clipped, and when that happens, that's when it's going to be justification to go into a broader war. Maybe it'll just be to ramp up the war in Yemen. Maybe just Lebanon to start, but ultimately we'll mission creep our way across Syria, back again into Iraq, and then back, of course, into the final battle, which will be with Iran. So that is essentially what I got to share with you today. There was some other information coming out from across Europe, like Boris Pistorius, the defense minister of Germany, is saying that we need to understand that there is a real danger of war in Europe. The conflict in the Middle East and Russia's war against Ukraine should also have consequences in German society. We have to get used to the idea that there could be a threat of a war in Europe, and we have to prepare for it. In addition to that, Iran said that Israel has crossed the line. Remember, Iran was saying, don't cross the line. Well, now they're saying that they've crossed the line. Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi said on Saturday, issued an ominous warning to Israel and its allies that the nation had crossed red lines amidst its ongoing conflict with Gaza, and that there will be repercussions. Now we're seeing things flare up in Jenin in the West Bank, and the more things flare up in the West Bank, that means the Israelis have to go in there more. I think they might have even done an airstrike tonight, which would have been a first since the Second Intifada, I believe. But it's unconfirmed whether or not it was an airstrike by a plane or a drone strike or just some IED. We don't really know yet. There's just a lot of information that's unknown. But there's street battles escalating in that region. Jordan is calling for the positioning of missile defense systems on their territory. I would like to rephrase that and say that it's probably not Jordan who's requesting that. It's probably that they're being strong-armed by the Americans, who already have fighter jets based out of there. So the situation is so out of control. I honestly did not... I knew that the war between Israel and Iran was coming, and that's how this is going to start. It's going to be because, understand that Netanyahu is basically admitted that or stated that the Iranians are 90% funding Hamas, okay? Even though he doesn't really have any proof of that, which is not to say it's not true. It's just to say that he hasn't offered any proof at this point in time. So that's how they're going to get us into this. It's going to be either something that starts with Iran and Israel possibly, or maybe it starts, things heat up with Hezbollah first, and then it reaches a point where the Israeli military is not able to sustain fighting, and then they have to take the fight to Iran in order to bring the United States into the fold, which would explain all of these warships that are currently here. This map is courtesy of Schizo Intel, if I didn't mention before. And yeah, and then, of course, all bets are off with respect to how far this thing could progress, because while Russia might not want to get involved, they stand to benefit from a higher oil price, as do the Saudis, so to speak. But it just means that if the Iranian oil is playing more of a role in the markets, then there's less demand for Saudi oil. Okay, so Iran does have a vested interest in creating instability in the region, I would presume, because it works in their interests, creates a greater need for oil. But of course, our strategic oil reserve, it should not be overstated that we do have half of what it once was back in 1980. And of course, demand is much higher now, which is something that a lot of people don't pay much attention to. So we're going to see how the markets react to this. I do believe that people are being naively optimistic about the U.S. ability to manage this situation. I think the actual plan is going to be to provoke. You don't just move all this military equipment in for no reason. I personally think it's the last final Hail Mary, at the end of the, there's only 5 seconds left on the clock, the debt clock, and, time's running out, so we got to start one more war, or we got to hopefully lock down the Middle East for maybe another decade or so to keep the money printer going, because if we can't get a hold of this situation at this point in time, the American empire is finished. And there still, of course, is the concern from the Russian perspective that this huge amassing of ships that you're seeing here, that it is not, in fact, for Israel at all. That this is why Turkey is being so standoffish. It's because they're starting to say, hey, okay, we're a part of NATO, right? But is Turkey really a part of NATO? I heard a quote today that Turkey dances with everybody but is friends with no one. And, once we do amass all this force here, is Turkey then going to have to, is there going to be some altercation that pits Turkey against its NATO allies, or pits Turkey against individual NATO countries, and then that's a conflict of interest? So could the strategy be, the long game strategy, get all this military equipment into position, start a war with Hezbollah, with Syria, piss Turkey off, declare war on Turkey, which is why the countries surrounding Turkey, from Romania to Bulgaria, are all gearing up, Poland all gearing up for a major war, even Germany now, and then eventually Russia being the final goal of all of that. Because, of course, Turkey is trying to create various pipeline natural gas flow deals with the Russians. They want to be the natural gas hub for Europe, and maybe, there's certain economic military elements that don't want that to happen. But it's Sunday night, and I got to open up shop right away, so I should probably get a few hours sleep beforehand. But guys, the world is losing its mind. It is really losing its mind. People are... And the problem is that when you see situations like this, where people are fighting over stuff, and then you have the claims of pogrom, and these attacks, and then you're going to get it back in the other direction in terms of Islamophobic attacks, it just plays on each other, and it's a death spiral, vicious, self-fulfilling death spiral. So I'm going to try to stay out of it to the best of my ability and not engage with people online, because at this point in time, it's pointless. It is virtually pointless. It's almost best, even if you do have a strong opinion about this stuff, to just sit back and watch the world burn, and keep stacking your preps, your precious metals, your ammunition, your freeze-dried food, all your survival gear. Keep on stacking it to the rafters because, you know, once you ever have to use it, it's going to run out very, very quickly. Okay? So you guys take care, stay safe, and I will probably see you in a few hours. Canadian Prepper out.